As everyone was enjoying themselves on the class trip, for Issei, the time had finally come. In his search for the 99 wicked souls, his journey was now being brought to an end. In fact, the last 9 souls were actually in Kyoto. However, before Issei would go off to search for them, he decided to hold off on that at the moment, instead enjoying to spend time with his friends. Rainier, Irina, and Asya were being especially close to him, following his brush with death, never wanting to leave him out of their sights, not even for a moment. As they continued their travels, they would eventually find themselves at the Thousand Gate stairway, slowly making their ascent up to the top. When Issei would get a strong sense, he would move on ahead of the others, going all the way to the top where the shrine was. He could have sworn that he had sensed a presence there, although maybe it was just his mind playing tricks on him. However, his fears would be confirmed, as a young man with blue hair holding a spear, coiled by 2 snakes, would be sitting on top, surrounded by men in fox yokai mask. The young man would introduce himself as So-So, a hero for hire, and he had been contracted by the Fox Yokai clan to find the missing leader. Next to him would be a young girl with 9 foxtails. Issei would be surprised to see that the Fox Yokai had come to see them. However, they would quickly confront him on the matter of the missing clan leader. Although Issei had no qualms with them, he couldn't answer any of their questions regarding the situation, as he had no idea. However, the young girl was rather impatient, sending her hired help to go and attack Issei. The young man would use his spear, and Issei, with having no choice, would enter into his Ghost Rider form, his blazing skull rising with fire, as he took out his skull-crushed dagger, the 2 blades locking with one another as they engaged in combat. Before long, the others would arrive to assist, Issei getting a chance to see what they had learnt over time. Irina would summon the boosted gear to her hand, moving with a quickness as her angel wings carried her, while Rainier, flying with her half-devil, half-fallen angel wings, would create constructs of light to fend off the enemies. Once it became clear that they were on even footing, they would decide to retreat for now, although the young girl would make it very clear that she would eventually find her mother. With the attack now abated, and not sure of what else to do at the moment, Issei and the others would go to Azazel and fill him in on the details as to what happened. Azazel would promise to look into it, and for the most part, he would tell them to just continue on and enjoy themselves. However, Issei had other ideas in mind. He informed Azazel that the last 9 souls that he needed to reap, they were in Kyoto, and he couldn't turn a blind eye to it. Azazel nodded in understanding, only giving Issei the warning to be careful and to not cause too much damage. Issei would agree, and waiting until nightfall came, he would leave the hotel and summon his car forth, before driving through the streets of Kyoto. Eventually, he would find himself in front of a hotel that was also a host to a bar/casino, something rather exclusive. As he made his way inside, he would look and see that there were many who had come for the nightlife and the atmosphere. He could sense the darkness all around him, and he knew exactly what he was looking for. However, before he got too much farther, he would feel a hand on his shoulder. He turned back to see who it was and was surprised that it was none other than Danny Ketch himself. Danny's telling Issei that he was going to need some help if he was going to get into the restricted sections. After all, he was underage. Providing him with a spare suit that he had, the two of them would make their way inside of the club room. As the music blared and the drinks were pouring, the two men would use their abilities to sense the darkness. They made their way all the way to the back rooms, eventually finding what they were looking for. Stored deep behind the kitchen and behind the various inner walls was a secret storage room, and within, what they saw was absolutely horrifying. There were children locked in cages, but these were no ordinary children. Some were human, some were devils, some were fallen angels. This was a child trafficking ring. Only the lowest of the low could commit crimes such as these. Realizing what was going to happen, Danny would send word to Azazel at once, making sure that they had someone to help them out, at least in escorting the children to safety. Once they made sure that the children were safe, though, they would make their way to a private business room. Inside, there would be 9 men sitting at a table. These men were not ordinary. You see, they were once humans, now turned devils. A yakuza boss with his 8 generals. They committed terrible atrocities, some crimes so sickening that I dare not speak them. These men were the final 9, the ones who would be condemned. Both Issei and Danny would kick the door down and make their way into the room. The men were sitting at a table, eating and enjoying themselves, as they looked over and saw the two standing. "And just who the hell are you?" the boss would ask, as he took the cigar out of his mouth, letting the smoke poof into the sky above. "We can be a lot of things. We can be your judgment or your salvation. But for you, there is no redemption. There is no hope. We are vengeance." The two men would quickly transform into their Ghost Rider states. The 9 seeing what they truly were, they realized there was no point in holding back, as they transformed from their human state to devilish ghouls and beings of nightmare. Both Issei and Danny would join together as one in the fight, their righteous fury burning and setting ablaze to everything around them. They made short work of the generals, reaping their souls, before finally they made their way to the boss. Despite everything he had seen, the boss still remained calm and collected, as he entered into his own true form, devilish in nature. He truly believed that he had obtained power that would make him more than strong enough to fend off against would-be Ghost Riders, although that would prove to be his gravest mistake. For both Issei and Danny were fueled by the vengeance, by the fury, by the souls of all of whom had been wronged. The two of them would both stare into the eyes of the would-be leader, and as he looked back into them, what he saw was truly horrifying. He could feel the regret. He could feel the pain and the torment of all of whom he had wronged in his lifetime. so much so that it caused them to cower in fear, as both Danny and Issei would clasp their hands together. A red circle of fire would form around him, as the black skeletal arms would protrude from the ground, tearing and digging into his flesh, gripping him and pulling him downward, as they condemned the final soul to his fate. And with that, Issei's labor was complete. The first half. The 99 souls have finally been claimed. As Issei and Danny powered down, Danny would give Issei a pat on the back. He didn't think that it would be possible so quickly for someone like Issei, but he had managed to do it. He captured the 99 most wicked souls on Earth. He truly lived up to the moniker of the Spirit of Vengeance. Before long, Azazel would arrive along with Lady Leviathan. They would work in helping getting the kids to safety and finding them homes, doing the best that they could. Issei was happy to see that they were going to be taken care of. As he helped one girl out of her restraints, she looked up to him with a smile, holding him and thanking him for his help. For Issei to see the good that he was doing in the world, that was all worth it for him. To know that he would be the one to repay, to right the wrongs, to settle the score. Later on during the trip, as Issei rejoined the others, going about doing their sightseeing and their touring, they would eventually be confronted by more fox yokai once again. However, rather than getting into a fight, Rosvaiso would arrive, telling them all that they were summoned for a meeting at once. They would begin to make their way through the city of Kyoto, before eventually arriving to the fox yokai compound, where Azazel and Lady Leviathan would be waiting, along with the young girl from before, as well as her hired help, So-So. The young girl would introduce herself as Kuno. She would step forward to apologize for what happened the day before, for falsely accusing and for attacking them. She had desperately been searching for her mother and she wasn't sure what to do. Issei and the others would assure her that everything was fine. They understood where her intentions were coming from, and they didn't hold anything against her at all. So-So would also introduce himself as well, revealing that he was actually just an ordinary human, although an extremely gifted human. He was a hero for hire, basically for anyone who wanted his services or needed his help, and he was contacted by the Fox Yokai to assist in finding Kuno's mother. While Issei didn't care for him all that much, surprisingly enough, Biko actually knew who So-So was, the two of them actually being trained by the same master. You could say it was a reunion of sibling students, the two of them having a chance to catch up and see how the other was doing. They would all make their way inside to fully be debriefed on what had happened. They would learn that Yasuka, the leader of the Fox Yokai, had been kidnapped by the Chaos Brigade, and their whereabouts were still unknown. So-So had been hired not too long after to investigate, and when they arrived in Kyoto, being foreigners, they thought they were the enemy, and they attacked them by chance. Although now that they were all on the same side, they were now going to have to work together. Everyone being on the edge, knowing fully well what the Chaos Brigade were capable of. Issei, however, couldn't help but shake this feeling that there was something more that was coming. More than even he would realize. And his feelings wouldn't be all that off the mark, as not too long after, he would get a very urgent phone call from Akano, who would call him very concerned. As he answered his phone, he would hear her panicked and he would ask her what was wrong. And Akano, through hoarse breathing, would explain. Gasper had been kidnapped by the Chaos Brigade. Before long, Rias and the others would have made their way to Kyoto. Meeting with Kuno and the Fox Yokai clan, they would begin to sit down together and share information, discussing what happened for both sides, and trying to get to the bottom of the situation at hand. For Issei, he was still trying to make sense of it all when Vali would come and speak to him, explaining what had happened and how Gasper had been taken. It had been shortly after their fight with a rogue devil. Everyone was leaving to go home for the evening, Gasper being accompanied by Koniko. Once they were far enough away, apparently Nightmare attacked them, and during the attack, Gasper was taken. The main focus of the group was trying to figure out what the Chaos Brigade were after. Vali would tell of his experience in the underworld during the invasion. He would explain that when they had gone to rescue Orphis, the infinite dragon, Orphis would explain how she had gotten in the situation that she did. She had been confronted by Blackheart, who offered her a chance to have a rest eternally, to be somewhere where she could achieve her silence through the dimensional gap. She was happy to take him up on the offer since he was willing. However, the moment she arrived, it was a trap. However, it was too late for her to escape, and she had basically been turned into a living battery, being used by the Chaos Brigade to fuel their plans and ambitions. For Issei and Vali, they would ponder just what Blackheart's plans could be. What exactly was he after? First, he trapped Orphis. He used her power to attack the underworld. He then gained the Necronomicon Deus Mortis, or the Book of the Dead. He then kidnapped Yasuka, the Fox Yokai. And now he kidnapped Gasper, whose strength and quality came from his sacred gear, the Hidden Valor View. But what could this all mean? No one really knew for sure, and they were starting to grow worried. Just then, they would look to a TV that was mounted on the wall, everyone being silenced as it would be turned up. The news explaining a strange phenomena that was occurring in Tokyo, of all places. Even though it was in the middle of the afternoon, Tokyo was experiencing something that had never been before seen. There was a darkness that was washing over the city. It wasn't caused by any particular cloud, but for those who were inside of the city, they reported that it was like it was nighttime, like it was a starless night, a black sky hanging over the horizon. Everyone was trying to figure out why this was happening, or where something like this could have come from. It didn't seem like there was a storm or anything in particular, so why a black sky? However, Azazel, once he pondered over everything, and he realized what he was looking at, he suddenly became filled with a strong sense of dread. Danny also realized this as well, but he couldn't believe it. This couldn't be. Because if it was, it meant that everything that they thought they knew was absolutely wrong. Everyone would turn to the two elders, looking to ask them what they were talking about, if they could explain what was really going on. Danny and Azazel would look at one another, as they both would try to explain, but first they would have to go back into history. Danny would step forward to speak. You see, kids, a long time ago, even before our time, this world was filled with darkness and mayhem. There was a group known as the Dark Ones, 7 soulless demons who caused mayhem and chaos all throughout the earth. Their combined power was so great that they could rival even God and the Devil Kings. And for a millennia, they went unchallenged as the supreme force on earth. They ruled in pure evil and in darkness, from which there was no escape. However, eventually they were sealed away in a place known as the Dark Dimension. You could say it's opposite from the dimensional gap in and of itself, a void of pure dark, another realm entirely, something on the outskirts of our reality as a whole. When they were sealed away, the earth was finally allowed to prosper, for the most part. Although, ever since then, they have not been heard from or spoken to. In fact, the only way anyone could come into contact with them is if they gained their hands on the Necronomicon Deus Mortis, the Book of the Dead. You mean the book that Blackheart used? Issei would ask. Yeah, that's the one. But how did he get his hands on that book? I thought it was supposed to be impossible to find, Volley would explain. It is for the most part. The book was torn, each page taken out of its spine and hidden all throughout the world. The amount of time it would take to put the full book together, it was supposed to be next to impossible, but somehow he managed to pull it off right under our nose. And just how bad is this book? The more the book is used, the weaker the seal becomes. The seal that keeps the Dark Ones away from our world. If they were to come back into our reality, with the current fighting forces the way they are now, Azazel would explain, we wouldn't stand a chance against them. It'd be game over. Wait, are you serious? You mean to tell me that even with all of our powers combined, there's nothing that we can do? What about Sir Zex, the Devil Kings, Michael, any of them? It'd be pointless, Issei. You have to understand. The Dark Ones gain their power from the darkness of reality. Darkness is something that can never be destroyed, it can only be contained. As such, they are a force that can only be held at bay. They're like a fire that must be carefully watched. If it becomes too strong, it can become uncontrollable. And there would be nothing that we'd be able to do to stop them. Oh wait, if that's true, then why would Blackheart even use the Necronomicon? What would he have to gain from it? I mean, if the power of the book is supposed to corrupt souls, what would that mean for him if he doesn't have one? There was an eerie silence in the room. Issei, after saying that last line, Blackheart didn't have a soul. The Dark Ones were soulless demons. It was at that moment that the realization finally washed over them all. You don't mean... Is that who he is? Issei would ask. Both Azazel and Danny being absolutely shocked that they had never come to that conclusion. For so long, they just thought that Blackheart was a mindless beast of destruction. They never once considered the possibility that he might potentially be one of the 7 Dark Ones. But now that they had finally come to that realization, it all made sense. What Blackheart truly was. When Nicholas was brought back to life, it wasn't Nicholas that came back. It was one of the Dark Ones. One of the Dark Ones had taken possession of Nicholas's body, using it as a conduit, a way to access our world, our reality. That was where Blackheart got his strength from, why he was damn near impossible to kill, because he was one of the Dark Ones. And now to make matters worse, his plans, his ambitions, all of it was coming to the forefront, and now they realized what he was after, what he was trying to do from the very beginning. Blackheart was setting the stages for the next dark era. That was why he attacked the underworld, to weaken their fighting forces that had already been dwindling after the last Great War. It's why he waited so long. Everything that happened up until now, it was all planned by Blackheart. That was the being responsible. And now, all things considered, this blackness, the darkness forming around them, this was the prelude. It began with a dark and starless night. From there, the seal would slowly be undone, to the point where all 7 of the Dark Ones would be brought back to their world. This was what he was after. How could they have been so foolish to not realize what was going on this whole time? But then Issei would consider another point of view. Nicholas Blaze, Blackheart, they weren't one and the same. And yet, if this was the plan of Blackheart all along, why wasn't it executed sooner? Under the right circumstances, they could have done this a long time ago. But they were delayed somehow. What if Nicholas, his spirit, was still fighting for control? That was why Blackheart was always challenging strong opponents. It was Nicholas's influence. Nicholas, even in his dying moments, gave them a fighting chance. To force Blackheart to always seek out a strong opponent to fight, for it to be imbued within his nature. That meant that Blackheart, above all else, even above bringing back his Dark One companions, he wanted the ultimate fight. As such, it would give them the opportunity to kill him before he could succeed. The more they stopped to realize this, the more it became clear what Johnny meant when he said to free his son. His son was still fighting. Deep within Blackheart, his son was still fighting for control. As everyone would ponder the information that they had now heard, Azazel would leave at once with Lady Leviathan to go and warn the other Devil Kings, along with Michael, Odin, and all of the other mythologies. They all needed to prepare for what was coming. This was going to be a battle unlike any that they had ever experienced. They had waited until after the Great War, when God and the 4 previous Devil Kings were dead, so that they could make their move with little to no resistance. As Issei pondered over this, he now realized what he needed to do. Defeating Blackheart, it was more than just about vengeance. It was more than about just getting even. There was a boy desperately fighting, giving it his all to try to help and save everyone. It was only right that he could do the same for them. As Azazel went to contact Sir Zex, he would tell the others that they needed to do what they could. Danny Ketch left immediately to the underworld to go and inform Lady Mephisto of everything that had transpired, leaving Rias and her team of the Occult Research Club. Everyone gathered together. The only thing left to do now was to decide what they were going to do. They had approximately 72 hours before the darkness would take full effect and the Dark Ones would be brought back to this world. With just 72 hours, a mere 3 days, that was the time. There wasn't going to be a second chance. Issei would stand along with everyone else, telling them that this was their final battle. They were either going to defeat Blackheart here and now, or the world as they knew it would be brought to an end. And he was not going to let that happen under any circumstance. Everyone looked to Issei in that moment, wanting to follow in his footsteps, to move forward, and to fight until the very end. As they made their way outside, they would look towards the direction to where Tokyo was. Issei would tell anyone that could fit in to hop into his car and to hold on tight. As they did so, the others would go to the Grimmery train and they would make their way towards Tokyo as well. Once everyone was inside, the wheels would set ablaze as the black skyline would speed out of Kyoto, burning a trail behind it as it moved towards the darkness of Tokyo. Within the center of the city, both Yasuka and Gasper were tied to an altar, as Blackheart oversaw the final preparations. As he went outside, standing atop of the tallest building in Tokyo, he would look to see the darkness overtaking the city. And even though he couldn't see it now, he could feel off in the distance a powerful force was coming his way. This filled him with excitement and anticipation. It seemed Issei Hyodo survived after all. This was truly going to be fun. He finally found a toy that wouldn't break so easily. As both Issei and Blackheart stared off into the distance ahead of them, they knew that the final clash was soon at hand. And for them, there was going to be no way out. This was going to be the end. One would stand, and one would fall. As they made their way, the final showdown in Tokyo would soon be upon them.